Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial Group, Rydan Investments, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights 7 to 9 Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Definitely, yeah, and one of those inspirational guests is up first here, and this is a first, I think. It's good timing. So we have Devil's Food Cake Day, and we're going to ask everybody their favorite cake, and we've got a birthday boy on the show. So Darin Burns is 61 today. The number 61 is significant to him. So this is a good full circle thing. He's got a very inspirational story, and he's I believe, the first person to play organized football for 6 decades. So excited to get him on the show. I heard about his story a while ago. We connected on social media, and so I'm excited to talk to him about his inspirational journey. But welcome to the show, Darin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. Now, do you have a favorite cake? I know you're training, so you're probably not eating a lot of cake right now.
Well, no, I'm not, but I cheated today. I made a Delucia cheesecake last night, and I ate half of it today. So I was given permission I could have a cheat day. So my girlfriend's away. She said I could cheat with just cheesecake.
Nice. That's a good pick. Cheesecake's a good pick. Yeah. And you gotta have a cheat day. That, you know, I know you're working hard. I've seen the transformation on social media with all the workouts you're doing, and it's amazing the shape that you're in at 61 to play competitive football here at this age.
Well, you got to be. I mean, I'm like I have pride in my game. I'm not like, say, you guys from the Detroit area. I'm not like, I always use this analogy. You know, Gordie Howe, he went out and set a record, played one shift, and sat on the bench. For me, I would feel I cheated. I want to play a full game, full season. So, you know, this is now my 5th season straight playing at this level. You know, so I have to take it serious because I'm playing against kids like that are in college, university, that are trying to make it to pros. We had a couple of guys that played in the NFL on my team last year. One was a fullback, 280-pound fullback. So, you know, I have to be in shape. So I'm right now about 6'5", 284. You know, about 12% body fat right now. So I'm on a pretty good nutritional diet. I don't want to use a diet, but lifestyle. I train 6 days a week, box 3 days a week, plus work 50 hours a week. So, and I lift steel for a living. So, I mean, that alone is just keeping my body in shape. I mean, last year was a rough year with, you know, I was battling cancer. I was in a car accident the season before where I broke ribs. It's just been one thing after another, with COVID and a divorce, which was a good thing, getting that off my plate. But just in general, it's been anything that come at you has come at me through it. So it's been really, really challenging, but it's been extremely rewarding because I've been able to be laser focused on the task at hand. And, you know, I'm a starter on the team. I lead the team in sacks. You know, I'm a guy that I play nose tackle or inside tackle, so I'm getting double and triple teamed by some kids that are, you know, 300-pound university kids. So I have to maintain my body. So otherwise I'd be in a morgue.
Yeah, and it's impressive how good a shape you've stayed in and making it through all those things. I knew about the car accident, but I didn't know about the cancer battle. So that was a couple of years ago here.
It was last season. I just had it finally dealt with. It was a prostate, and we got it looked after. And my doctors managed it through the schedule of football. And you know, I've been. You know, one thing when you played pro back in my younger days, you know, somebody was in with a gunshot wound to the heart, and I walked in with a broken finger. You get put ahead before the guy with the heart problem because you were an athlete. Then you become a normal person, right? So now that I'm back playing again and getting some notoriety and some recognition, the doctors are taking a little bit more care of me, you know, monitoring blood work and doing this and doing that. And they caught it at the right stage, and they got me in and got me out, and we've been working. And they know football's a very important part for what I'm trying to do right now. So they're all working around my schedule, which has been awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I know that football's a big part of the motivation, but it's impressive that you're staying this motivated to fight off all these things, like the car accident, your past, you've got your accelerating age, yet you're staying in the same shape as some of these young guys that are in their 20s and 30s. That's impressive. What keeps you motivated to do this?
Well, my legacy, I've been playing for 6 decades. I don't want to be that guy that plays and, just played one snap and hung around or what have you, So my goal this year is to lead the league in sacks. I'm gonna walk out on top. That's my plan. I want the team to win a championship, and I'm going to lead the league in sacks this year. So, I was close to it last year. So it's just that, and the fact that you've read my book, so you know what Bruce means to me. So I'm playing for his legacy. So nothing will stop me from playing. The only thing that will stop me is if I drop dead of a heart attack on the field. Other than that, broken bones, doesn't matter. Like last year I tore my meniscus, I broke a finger, broke 6 ribs, and the ribs were a carryover from the car accident from the season before. I was just dealing with that. But I just managed the pain and kept on working, because if I stop, it's over. So I have to keep pushing through. So I just push through. I know that Bruce is looking down, and that's the motivation that I need in my life. Before we get into all this stuff, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of young people in Montreal. There's my girlfriend's down visiting her son, Jeremy, and his 2 girls, Michaela and Emily. And it's Emily's birthday yesterday, so I want to say happy birthday there. Bon fight, Emily. And, they're great kids. He's a great young man. So I'm really honored to have them in my life. But anyhow, let's carry on the question there. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. You got to get your shout-outs in. Happy birthday, Emily. Yeah. She's almost your birthday buddy there, just one day off. Yeah. But to the thing about the heart attack on the field, if you had a heart attack, I just imagine you would bounce back up and get a sack on the next play.
Yeah. Well, I always told people, they said to me that, because the book is called 61 Never Forgotten, and the book is dedicated to Bruce, who wore number 61. I wear number 61, and Bruce will never be forgotten as long as I'm breathing. But I made a joke. I said, well, if I do drop dead on a football field from a heart attack, well, 61 will definitely never be forgotten.
Yeah,
the ones in the stands. So but it's been a truly a blessing to get this opportunity. Like Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, he has a saying about goals. Goals are great. Having goals are great, but it's what you become when you achieve your goals. And hopefully, I become a better man by achieving these goals. And that's all you work for every day. You try to work to be better yourself, better your body, better everything that you do. And I try to do that all the time. And I think that has kind of governed me through the highs and lows of my life. I've always taken a positive outlook to life. I've had a really challenging childhood. So football's been an outlet for me. To me, it's the greatest game in the world. They say baseball's America's sport. Well, I don't think so. I think it's football. Football is a great sport. It's a team sport. You got to work together. You've got different religions, different races, you got different things, but we all get together with one common goal, looking at that ball, and in my case, stopping the ball from coming down the field. If you're on offense, you're all getting together, visualizing going down the field to score the touchdown. There's not a sport like it. If the guy next to me screws up, it can affect the team. So we all got to work together, and that teaches you teamwork, leadership, and how to work with other people. And I think more kids should play the game of football. It's getting safer. There was some times back, I played in 6 decades, so they joke I played before the face mask came out. So it's kind of I've seen the evolution of it, and the game is getting safer. It's getting to a point that kids have to get an education coming out of university. So it's the greatest sport in the world. Period.
Yeah, and they're developing the flag football leagues too, so people can still play it at a young age and learn it that way. So, but I agree with you. I think, I know baseball is known as America's pastime and America's sport, but I think football has surpassed it. We cover a lot of baseball on the show, and I'm a baseball fan, but I definitely agree with that. I want to go a couple different directions here because you dropped a name that I want to talk to you about, but we want to make sure to highlight Bruce because that's what your book is about. Want to differentiate him for any NFL fans, American football fans. This isn't the Bruce Smith that played for the Buffalo Bills. This is a Bruce Smith that played in the Canadian Football League. So I want to talk about him and his impact on your life.
And he also played in the NFL before that. Bruce Smith. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles in 1971. So Bruce came to Canada in 1972. He was a 22-year-old black fellow from Brownsville, Texas. He grew up in the segregation. He grew up in a time when being black in the South in Texas might not have been the most friendliest thing to be growing up from the stories that he told me. But I was at a football camp when I was 14 years old, and I was in a group home, and I was hitchhiking back to my group home from the football camp, and here's this guy, he pulls up in this black four-door Mercedes, and he yells out, "Hey, boy, what are you doing hitchhiking?" And I said, "Well, I'm got to get home." He said, "You got any parents?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't." So he opened up his door, he got me in the car, and he drove me to Mississauga, which is the opposite way of where he was going, and he dropped me off at the group home, and we had small talk the whole way there. He was the captain of the Toronto Argos. He basically owned the city of Toronto. Like, wherever he went, people, knew who he was. And for the guy to take that kind of time to give me a ride to my group home. But the thing that caught me is the next day he showed up at my group home. He drove down to pick me up and take me to a gym and lift weights. And from that moment on, we became friends. Like, he became my big brother at first, and then he became a father figure in my life because I didn't have any parents. So to have this guy show interest in a skinny, I was like 160 pounds, long hair, 14-year-old, white kid being picked up by this monstrous black guy that's from Texas, has had his own demons that he was dealing with in his life. But, he got me a position with the Toronto Argos as a ball boy. He got me involved in football. So I was a ball boy with Alonzo Highsmith and Eric Metcalf. Both their dads played with Bruce. So for me, that was my turning point, because in that road of life, when you're that age, 14, 15, your life can go in a couple of different directions. And fortunate for me, I was able to meet Bruce, and he pulled me into sports and work and doing all these things versus, the other where, I would have been in jail or dead by now, So he had a major influence in my life. He talked to me every day throughout my life. The last time I saw him was when he told me he had cancer. That was in December 17th of 2012. So I flew down to Toronto immediately to spend time with him. He gave me his marching orders, as I said, and I just told him, I said, "Listen, man, I can't see you diminish. You're my Superman. There's no way that I can watch you go down like this." So I spent 3 days with him. I came back home. 17 days later, he was gone. He died on January 3rd of 2013. And, the thing about Bruce, he showed me how to live, and he taught me how to die with dignity. So I don't know how to put it, but he's been the most influential person in my life. There's about 3 people that have been really influential in my life, and he is by far the most influential person that I've ever met. And that, he showed me unconditional love. There was no reasons in the world why he did what he did, but he did it, and I'm so grateful for it. So Bruce asked me to keep his legacy going, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm playing ball, telling the story of Bruce, and there's no better way of, hey, there's a 61-year-old guy playing football. I'm on your show right now, and I've been asked to do all these other shows. It's because I'm 61 and I'm playing football, but it's all about Bruce. This is not the Darin Burns show. This is about the Bruce Smith legacy. And I've just been fortunate to be a tool being used in building this. And we've had some great people, media people follow and pushing this through. We got a documentary that we're getting done. It's going to be coming out in the fall on TV. My life and Bruce together. So it's going to be an interesting year. It's all about bringing awareness to child abuse. It's about like if we look at our situations in the States and Canada, we have a drug problem, we have a homelessness problem, we have a suicide problem, and homelessness, suicide, and jail. So if you take a look at the people that have been affected by abuse, 80% of the people that are in prison or are homeless or drug addiction or have committed suicide, they've got some sort of major abuse that happened to them in their lives when they were younger. And we need to correct that. So, helping a homeless person off the street is one thing, but if we can get down to helping the children, correcting them, we have, like how Bruce corrected me and before that, so I didn't have to go through that, we can make changes. So we've started up a movement and a foundation that we're getting registered in Canada right now called the AACA, Athletes Against Child Abuse. And it's all about Bruce's legacy. And it's about, looking at how can a tree grow without roots. So if a tree can't grow without roots, how do you expect a child to? So we're trying to create a movement by getting athletes to get involved, like with the Boys and Girls Club. Like today's my birthday, and I just did a shout out to all my Facebook fans. And I just said, if you guys want to get me a birthday present, this is what I ask of you. Go to a Boys and Girls Club. Go to a place where young kids of risk need help. Go give them some of your time, whether you're a high school star, college star, a pro football player, pro athlete, empty nester, whatever the situation is. Go give some time. Go give some unconditional love. You'll be surprised at the impact that you will make on these kids' lives. And we can make changes so that we can reduce the amount of homelessness. We can reduce the amount of suicide. We can reduce that because we're fixing the problem before it becomes a problem. And as an athlete, these kids look up to us. When I run on a football field, I can have 100 kids from the Boys and Girls Club coming out with the smoke, the energy, the bang, and running out with the loud music onto the football field when they honor my career on June 21st in Burlington. So I want to inspire these kids. That's what happened to me when I was a kid. I got inspired, and it changed my life. And I'm hoping I can do it. And as athletes and as people at shows and things like that, we can make the changes. Let's not think of our politicians saving the day. It's got to start with us, with the ground roots swale, where we start to show kids love and respect. You don't have to be the parent to love a child. You don't have to do this. You can do it unconditionally and try to make these kids feel that they're welcomed. And when you do that, you'll make a change. And that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I went through rape, beaten. I went to 27 different schools by the time I went to grade 9. If you read my book, you would wonder, how am I still living?
Oh, yeah.
And it's because of Bruce.
And I did, and that's the one act of kindness, kind of random act of kindness that Bruce had, and then he had a tenfold effect on your life, and now you're affecting everybody else's lives, and so it's a great story. We got to take a quick break, but we'll pick up with that after the break with Darin Burns, the birthday boy, giving us some great inspiration and some things to think about. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with birthday boy Darin Burns, is shining a light on a lot of great causes, talking about his inspirational story from traumatic childhood and Bruce Smith saving him and putting him on the right path. And he's had a lot of great stuff. I want to talk a little bit. We talked about the youth part of it, Darin. I want to talk about the fact that you had a very rare. There was a lot of light shined on this year because LeBron played with his son, but you also played with your son in your organized football career. That had to be one of the highlights.
Yeah, we set a world record by being the oldest father-son to play a game together. His university gave him permission to come and play the game with me. He was a captain of the university team, and the coaches knew that it was an important moment. So, yeah, I mean, like as a football guy, I mean, every man would grow up and think, "Wow, I wish I could play with your son." So here I am with my son, and it's kind of funny during the game. He plays offensive line, but he came over and played defensive line beside me, and we were just a terror between the two of us. Like the quarterback didn't know which way to go. We were throwing people around. We had a blast doing it, but he turned to look at me during the game, and we were running. And I remember him saying to me during a play, "Dad, I'm having the most fun I ever had." And then he goes out and lays out a guy. We had such a blast to do that. And between the two of us, I mean, he's 305 pounds, 6'4". I was 300 pounds, 6'5", as father and son, and we were starting and playing beside each other. And to me, that was the highlight. Like, you could give me 5 Super Bowls, I don't care. That moment of doing that, I don't think there's a Super Bowl player out there that's played football with his son at a competitive level, semi-pro, and has that experience. So for me, I thank University of McMaster for allowing that to happen. We didn't break any rules because of eligibility. It was an awesome opportunity for me to have that memory that he and I will bank for the rest of our lives. Like it's crazy. And there's a picture you saw on my Facebook page where we're both on our knees together with our hands. That wasn't planned. That's just the way I sit, stand, and kneel, and that's the way he kneels, and we look identical. So it's just. Yeah, it was truly a blessing to have that. And I know that as a father and other fathers that I spoke to said, "Man, I wish my knees could last that long so I could do that." So for me, that was something that the sport gave me back, and I'll never forget that.
Well, there's so many unbelievable parts of your story. I have to imagine because you were having kids at the beginning of your career, I can't imagine you said, "Okay, you're holding him as a baby," saying, "Oh, we're going to play together on the same team someday."
I was 36 years old when he was born, so the odds of that happening were slim and none coming down the thing. But stranger things have worked out. I mean, like the fact of me coming back and playing ball, that's what we detected the cancer early, so we're able to get at things early. So football has given me so much in my life. Like, it's given me new life. It's given me this. It's given me my son and I relationship, and I have a great team behind me that gets me going, especially this past 6 months or whatever. It's been very trying mentally to, oh God, I got to get to the gym. I spend about 1,000 hours a year training to play 8 hours of football. So there's a lot of that time where, I wish I could just put up my feet and, have a milkshake and watch a movie or something like that. But you got to look at it and go, no, it's a protein shake, and get your rear end to the gym for 2 hours. I give a lot of support to my girlfriend, and Nick. She's really pushed me hard for the last 4 months. She's kept me centered. She's the type of person that is very hard to get a compliment from, but she is very direct on, like, one day I came home tired from work. She says, well, you better get your rear end and get to the gym because you need it. It's like, really? I wanted to rest. No, go to the gym and we'll have dinner afterwards. So from that standpoint, having that and having the support of other people, my guys I've trained with and I'm boxing and stuff like that, all these little things are helping me achieve this ultimate. And I plan on this year, I'm in the best physical shape I've ever been in my entire life. Even back when I was 25, I surpassed it all. I'm bigger, leaner, stronger. So I owe it to everybody. My Facebook family, they send me messages all the time. Sometimes I'm in the dumps and I get a message from somebody to say, man, you've inspired me. So I'm at the gym. Look at this. I've lost 20 pounds. So it's been a really where I've kind of wanted to go out and honor Bruce's legacy. I picked up the fan club of the over 55 club that are trying to latch on to what I'm doing. So I'm supporting that as well. So it's truly been awesome. Like, you can't write this stuff up. I shouldn't be where I am right now, and I'm just totally blessed.
Well, this is exactly the type of story I like. I only read nonfiction. I don't really care for fiction writing. It's just a personal preference. But I like stories that almost sound fictional. Like you said, you couldn't write a story this complex and layered and without it being true like it is. And so it's an inspirational story. I'm glad you could come on and tell it. And you're talking about the workout piece. I wanted to talk to you about that because you said you're in steel now, but you also had a whole franchise of health clubs and trained professional wrestlers and prime ministers and all sorts of famous people during your time too.
Yeah, I've had that opportunity. I had one of the largest fitness chains in Eastern Ontario back in the 90s and early 2000s. I've always been in the gym business. I like it, so it's just something I've gravitated to from Big Tanny's when Bruce got me a job at Big Tanny's in 1979, working on the gym floor, actually cleaning showers to start with. And I worked my all the way up to owning a bunch of fitness centers that were 50,000 square feet. I had 330 employees, 40,000 members, and we were generating around $20 million in annual sales. So it was a lot of fun doing that at the time. But it does take a lot of your time, and you move on to different things. So I went into house building, I did this and did that. So I've done a lot of different things, being an entrepreneur and stuff like that. For a guy that I don't even have a grade 9 education. Like, I went to 7 schools in 9 months in grade 9 when I went through the group home system. So it was kind of hard to meet friends or do this. I mean, while at one school, they thought I was a narc because I was only in there for a couple of weeks and I was gone, so because I got shipping around to all these different group homes. And I just said, screw it. If this is what school's going to be like, I quit, and that was it. I ran away from the group home and been on my own ever since.
Yeah.
So but I can tell you one thing, that when I had the car accident and I was dealing with Jody with my book and we were writing things, it became therapeutic for me, because if anyone out there is listening that's been abused physically or sexually, like I was at 4 and 5 years of age, I was raped a couple hundred times. Again, when I was 10 years old in the Salvation Army under their care. I didn't tell anybody. I bottled it up. My father used to kick the crap out of me. I went to different places. My dad broke my nose. He broke my jaw. The things that I went through when I was 5 years old, thrown against the ceiling and bounced on the floor, all these fun things that I've had to endure as a child, I didn't tell anybody about it. I kept it bottled up. There's only Bruce and a couple of others in my inner circle knew about it, because it's something that you feel dirty. You want to talk about being raped by other men and stuff like that. So, it was something that I was with a trainer, Sonia, and we were going for a walk, and she was saying to me, she goes, Darin, you're training hard, but you're not getting the results. There's something stopping you mentally from breaking through. And we're on a walk, and she just stopped halfway through the walk. It was like such a hot day. We're about 6 to 7 miles into the walk. She broke me down, and she looked at me. She goes, I was raped. What's your story? And so I told her, and I felt the world come off my shoulders. And it made me comfortable to talk to her about it. And then she says, you need to talk about it. You need to get this out. So I started to talk about it, and things started to systematically come into place for me. Because, what these people did to me as a child, I can't let them win my entire life over. I have to make my stand. So understanding it, admitting it, telling everybody what happened to me, because it destroys your relationships with your kids. It destroys relationships with your intimate partners. It destroys relationship with friends, because you just don't know how to function properly because you're carrying this heavy weight on. And my advice to anybody is you don't need to go see a shrink. You don't need to go see all this stuff. Find someone you can talk to and crack that egg and get it open. And you're going to feel so much better about yourself, because if I didn't have Bruce, I didn't have this, I would have been strung on drugs, homeless, dead, in a gutter. I don't know, because my life was set in such a way that that's the direction I was going. But instead, I went off in another direction. I had Bruce there, and then later on when I was 19, I got really sick, and I was ready to quit football. I was actually ready to kill myself. I was going to commit suicide just before Christmas when I was 19 in Niagara Falls. And for some strange reason, I went for a walk to get something to eat, some KFC. After I had my last meal, I had a gun, had everything set. I was going to go back. And in the mailbox, there was a letter, and it was from the Burlington Braves. And they invited me to come and play football for them. And they said, come play for us. You're a hell of a football player. I will make you great. I didn't know what to think of it and stuff, so it was the need of being wanted and stuff, I think, that saved me that day. And so I went to play for Coach Trimble, and, Coach did make me great. My records after 40 years still stand today. Most sacks in a game, most sacks in a season, most sacks in a career. I still hold them. I'm still in the history books across Canada in the top 5 in those categories still after 40 years. And I've had coaches in my life. Like, okay, I was the ball boy for Forrest Gregg, who Vince Lombardi says was his greatest football player ever coached. I've been coached by Marv Levy. I've been coached by Papa Joe Farragelli. I've been coached by Al Bruno. Fred Glick. I can go on. But my greatest coach was Coach Trimble, and coached me in Burlington. They always have the saying, a coach teaches you the game, a good coach wins games, a great coach impacts lives. And Coach Trimble was my greatest coach. And he's not a pro coach. He's just an amateur coach. But he had the biggest impact in my life on the field that anyone's ever had before. He knew the switch to turn me on. I single-handedly turned football games around because he looked at me on the sidelines and said, get it. And I went out and I did it because I loved the man. I respected the man so much.
Well, that's great stuff, Darin. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your inspirational journey here, and we want to follow your journey. We want to have you back on at some point too, and check in with you here as the season goes on. But appreciate you coming on the show. Look forward to having you back on. And happy birthday, happy 61st birthday. We hope you enjoy it here.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on. Okay.
Thanks, Darin. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye now. Bye.
All right, thanks to Darin Burns. Great stuff there, really inspirational. We've got more inspiration on tap here because we've got a pair of hand cyclists sponsored by Mary Freebed. We've got Casey Falkner first. He's going to tell us about his journey through adaptive sports. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Speaking of Mary Freebed, we've got a Mary Freebed sponsored guest here. I've been wanting to get more adaptive sports content here on the show, and we've got Casey Falkner, who's a hand cyclist that recently competed in the Riverbank run here, and we want to talk to him about his journey and the race and his career in general here. So welcome to the show, Casey.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you making the time to come on the show. We just had an inspirational interview about a 61-year-old football player that is the oldest player to play professional football, and we like those types of stories. Yours is similarly inspirational in that you had an accident, and you had to kind of reform your life and get some motivation and find some purpose, and you turned to the world of adaptive sports, which we're all interested in here on the show.
Yeah, well, yeah, I appreciate the interest. A few years ago, had a car accident, and shortly after was trying to find a way to keep up with the kids and family and stuff like that, and found hand cycling, and that sort of turned into racing, and then things sort of just snowballed from there.
Well, yeah, and your career with it has taken off quickly. I read in an article there that you do the hand cycling about 180 miles a week. Maybe it's gone up since then, I don't know. And you placed third in the Boston Marathon already.
Yeah, I did. I go anywhere between 120 and 180 miles a week, depending on my training load. I've got a coach who structures all my workouts and stuff like that. So that's a load off my back trying to figure out what to do and when. And yeah, it's been pretty. I would say I got bit pretty hard by the racing bug, and I feel like it's been pretty quick. It's a little bit surreal with how quickly the results have come in. But yeah, third in the Boston Marathon was a bit of a surprise in April. I didn't really know what to expect there. I know there's lots of fast guys. There's the World Cup is going on right now in Europe for hand cycling, so that kind of pulls away some of the really fast guys. So I suspect my results are a little inflated because of that.
Well, it's still a big accomplishment, so we don't want to undercut it too much. But is that something you aspire to as well? Do you want to compete on the world stage like that?
It would be great. That requires a level of commitment that I'm not sure. I just don't know if I'd be able to make. It would, like I said, it would be amazing. There's lots of really cool opportunities. The national team has really good support. They're based out of Colorado Springs in Colorado, and yeah, there's a group of hand cyclists out there now that are all really pretty fast. I've raced with a couple of them, and I don't stand much of a chance right now. But I mean, I also don't want to write it off, the possibility of potentially doing that. There's a, just like everything, there's a pretty fine balancing act to strike between, work and, kids and family and cycling competition and stuff like that. So yeah, potentially, maybe. We'll see.
Well, yeah, just especially with how quickly it has taken off, it's good that that's potentially in the cards for you. You never know what the future holds, and you're a good example of that. That obviously you had the accident, but then overcame it and turned it into this great hobby and racing career here. But I want to talk a little bit about the coaching. Is that a coach now? How did you find that relationship? Is that through Mary Freebed, or is that outside of that? Because I know you're into coaching some yourself, I believe.
A little bit, yeah. So the Mary Freebed hand cycle team has actually a lot of alumni who are world class level. Kate Brim won gold at the Paralympics TT, the time trial in Paris. Matt Tingley, who is also out of Mary Freebed hand cycling, is a Paralympian, and he's at the World Cups now as well. So yeah, it's kind of really cool to kind of walk in their shoes, so to speak. But as far as the coaching goes, my good friend Steve Chapman, who I met through the hand cycle team, he's an avid racer and has been racing for a while, and he sort of hooked me up with the coach that he uses, Tom Davis. He's a former Paralympian himself, hand cyclist, and has done raced all across the world, has a pretty spectacular pedigree. In fact, he actually just came up and raced with us at the Riverbank Run, and destroyed us all by minutes, which is always reassuring that your coach can kick your butt. So that's really cool. But yeah, and then I'm taking a very small role in sort of co-coaching the hand cycle team at Mary Free Bed with Steve this year, just trying to develop as much interest and excitement locally as we can for the sport.
Interesting. Yeah. Kate, we're hoping to have her on the show at some point. She's got a busy schedule, as you know, and can imagine. And Steve's actually our next guest, so we're going to be talking to him in a minute. But yeah, it's great stuff. It's nice how that builds community for you guys. And it's funny about the coaching part, because I was thinking that same thing when you were saying it, because it's like, yeah, if you beat them, you're like, well, I've got to upgrade my coach now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I've never actually properly raced with Tom, my coach, and I've known he was always fast, and he retired from racing a while ago. He's maybe coming back, I'm not exactly sure, but holy smokes, yeah, he's really fast. So yeah, always good to have a guy that can actually put put results out as well as intimate knowledge of the sport.
Yeah, and it's great that you guys collaborate so well within that community, both with, you're talking about with Steve, with your coach, with Kate. Do you have any words of advice for people that might be in a similar position or going through a tough time? You've obviously been through a lot in your journey. Do you have any words of advice for young people that may be experiencing something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, when I was first injured, it took me a little while to kind of get into a place where I was, even able to focus on recreation or cycling or anything like that. But I will say that the main reason that I stuck with it was the community, was getting out with other folks that use wheelchairs or have prosthetics or whatever, have other hurdles to their fitness sort of lifestyle, and being with those guys, gals, everyone, and just the camaraderie, the community, the support in that way was what really hooked me on coming back. For me, I live like an hour and a half out of the city, so I never really planned on coming to we have practice every week, every Wednesday at Millennium Park, and I had no intention of coming any more than maybe a couple of times this summer. And as soon as I got into it, and Mary Free Bed is fantastic, set me up with a loaner bike for the whole year, and all of a sudden I found myself structuring my schedule so I can make it up to every single week, and being disappointed on rain days that I don't get to go ride with the guys and stuff like that. So for me, it was a huge mental boost in just being able to get out. And I was slow, I could hardly get up some of the hills. Some of the guys were even generous enough to push me from behind in their bikes. And you don't have to be fast. You just have to be interested in getting outside, getting with some people that maybe look like more like you than the rest of the community, and the rest kind of takes care of itself. So we're as welcoming as we can possibly be.
Definitely, it's a great community, and and we're happy that you can come on and represent it. We're going to talk to Steve here next, but we appreciate you being on the show and sharing your journey, and good luck with the next steps here.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, and appreciate your interest.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Good luck on your journey, and hopefully we'll check back in with you here after maybe you place first here in one of these future, the Boston Marathon or something like that. But we look forward to following you, and we appreciate you sharing your journey with us here.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Casey. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to Casey Falkner. Great stuff from him. We're going to talk to Steve Chapman, who he mentioned, the other hand cyclist team coach there. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on Steve Chapman. We just had his buddy. I didn't know they were buddies, but it makes sense. Casey Falkner was on the previous segment. Now we got Steve coming on, and we want to talk to him about his journey in adaptive sports and his race. We didn't really talk much about the race with Casey, so I want to know how the Riverbank run went for you guys.
Oh, Ryan, you had to bring that up because Casey was the lead ahead of me. So Casey did a fabulous job at the race, and I came in fifth, actually, at the Riverbank run.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, this is my fault, Steve. I'm in 50-50 chances. I always pick the wrong one. I have very bad luck in 50-50 chances. So I asked one of you about the race, and it was you. But fifth place is nothing to be ashamed of. That's great. And Casey did leak that your coach was ahead of both you guys. So that's mainly what he said about that.
Well, and I think that's the reason we pay our coach.
Well, that's what we were saying, because, as he was telling the story, I was like, okay, hopefully the coach wins, nothing against you guys, but it's like, if you guys beat him, it's like, well, okay, coach, we're going to move on to a different coach now.
Yes, that's exactly it. But I don't think we have to worry about that for a while.
Yeah, well, that's great. And we were talking about the community aspect of this. That's one of the things that appeals to me about this community. It's obviously a great community. You guys all kind of share in the fact that you had some obstacles to overcome, whether it was an injury or an accident or something from birth, but you overcome these obstacles and you turn it into such joy for yourself and the people that you guys inspire. And it's such a great way to have a motivation, because we've had our third interview of the show so far, and all three stories have been about overcoming adversity and how having a purpose has pulled people through a tougher time, and that's what you've done with the hand cycling.
That certainly is true. For me, the adaptive sports really changed my outlook after my accident. So I had my accident in 1984. I was 18 at the time, and the first few years were really, really tough for me at 18, being 6'4" and playing able-body basketball and riding that dirt bike. That's actually how the accident happened, motocross, to being told you won't walk again. And my family and friends I owe everything to, because, they kept me going, and they were there. They never left my side. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, they really don't get me being in a wheelchair. And about 3 years after my accident, I found wheelchair basketball and started playing wheelchair basketball. And when I came to the first tournament and there were hundreds of athletes in chairs playing basketball, I was like, okay, I get this now. And, started my journey in adaptive sports and played basketball. Then I went to tennis, and then ended up hand cycling. That's what I'm doing now.
Interesting. Okay, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. I did want to have one follow-up question about the accident, though. I want to make sure I got this right. I read prior to the interview that not only did you have the accident, but you were there for 14 hours after the accident. You were laying there, and nobody was able to attend to you.
Yeah, that was correct. I wasn't racing that day on my dirt bike. I was on what I called a joyride. My mom still doesn't understand that, but I was going through an apple orchard, and my front wheel came off the bike, and I went over the handlebars at 70 miles an hour-ish And so no one knew where I was at, and they had a huge search for me all night long, and no one found me until the next morning. So I did lay there for 14 hours till I was found.
Well, I'm glad they found you in time, and you've done a great job at recuperating and building yourself back up. Now you have a different kind of joy riding with the hand cycling, so that's good. Now, but you did hit on something that I didn't know about the basketball and the tennis. I'm surprised, given your history with basketball, that you didn't stick with basketball. Why did you transition into tennis and then hand cycling?
Just a change of things. I guess just kind of progressed and found different sports and something that I enjoyed more so for myself. Being and I don't know how to say this appropriately, but an individual sport, what I put into it is what I get out of it. And so in tennis and hand cycling, if the performance isn't as well as I had liked it to be, then I have no one to point the finger at but myself for not training hard enough or preparing well enough or whatever that might be.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, because that's why it's great that we do have individual sports and team sports. Different things appeal to different people. I'm more of a team sports guy. I like the passing element. That basketball was my main sport, but it's also great to have the individual sports too. So that makes sense. So tell us about Mary Freebed's role in your journey there, not only with getting into adaptive sports, but then transitioning and where you are now.
Yeah, so Mary Freebed, being the rehabilitation hospital, I did not go there after my accident. At the time of my accident, I actually was at U of M Hospital in Ann Arbor. So that's where I did my rehabbing. But then I moved to Grand Rapids to go to college and met several of the athletes that had been in Mary Freebed after their accident and started doing some peer mentoring. Then I got involved with the Junior Wheelchair Sports Camp, which is a week-long sports camp where we work with the youth. So Mary Freebed sponsors a lot of the sports teams, along with hand cycling, the basketball team, the quad rugby, the tennis. And kind of one of the things they ask of us athletes is if we would give back by coaching or being a coach or counselor at the week-long sports camp. So kind of got involved with that, and then over time became the coach for the hand cycle team.
That has to be a very fulfilling camp to do, to be with these young folks that are in different parts of the journey here and advise them and help them through their journeys.
It certainly is. I started, I believe, around 1989 as a counselor there and coach. And boy, if we do the math, I've been in a wheelchair for going on 41 years this year. So the kids that I had that were 10 or 11 years old are now adults with kids of their own, and they're back, teaching and being there at the camp. So for me, it's rewarding to be able to see that, someone that I had as a 10-year-old is now giving back also, and all the successes that they've had on their journey.
Oh yeah, well, and I won't. You've kind of given some indicating factors of your age here in the interview. I mean, fifth is pretty impressive here. You're doing well. How much longer are you planning to do this? I know you're in the coaching side too, but what are some of your goals and aspirations with it?
Well, I tend to joke with everyone that I've kind of got one foot in the grave right now. So at any point I can be out to pasture, but I still enjoy beating up on those 20-some-year-olds. So at 60 years old, I'm not sure how much longer I've got, but I'm going to go as long as I can and try to be as competitive as I can.
I tell you what, I'm not 20. I'm in my 40s, but we've had you're a 60-year-old competing in hand cycling. We had a 61-year-old football player. On the first segment, I need to go out there and run after the show or something. You guys are putting me to shame here. It's impressive to learn about your journeys, but yeah, So we got to get you out of here soon, but I want to get your advice for young people, like what you tell people at the camps and people you coach. What are some of your pieces of advice for young people that are dealing with similar things to you?
I would really suggest to them to try as many different things as they can. And again, that kind of goes back to the basketball. I thought basketball was, the thing I was going to be doing, and someone almost had to twist my arm into going into tennis. I had never played tennis before my accident, knew nothing about it, and they got me out on the courts and a tennis racket in my hand and my wheelchair, and I turned out really loving it. And it was kind of the same with hand cycling. I started hand cycling when my son was 4 as a means to ride a bike with him. I had to figure out, how I could be out there and we could ride bikes together. And a couple of my friends that I rode casually with that were in hand cycles shamed me into my first race, and I did it. And it was actually the Riverbank Run was my first race I ever did, back in 2015, I believe it was. And I was hooked after that. So I would just highly urge people to give things a try and explore different options, and don't feel you can't, because there's ways of figuring things out.
Oh yeah, there's lots of resources. We've talked about Mary Freebed. You had your journey with different hospitals. You guys, that's a great thing about this. Casey and I were talking about this. It's a great community. It's a very accepting community, and you guys all lift each other up and all of that. So it's great to see. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey, and we look forward to maybe you said your first race was 10 years ago, so you got to go another 10 years now.
Yeah, possibly. There are definitely buddies of mine that are in their 70s and still out on the race course and racing. So we're just going to see. It's in God's hands, and we'll see how far he takes me.
That's impressive. We appreciate you coming on the show, Steve, and we'll look forward to following your journey here.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
All right. Thanks. You too, Steve. All right. Thanks to Steve Chapman. Appreciate him coming on and talking about his journey with Mary Freebed. We're going to turn our attention to a local hockey here. We're going to have Nick Harrington, who's out in the lobby here. He's going to come on with his mate, Brandon Cooke from Hockeytown West, and they're going to give us a little review of the Grand Rapids Griffins and their season and the outlook for next season. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We've switched Rex out. We've got Nick Harrington here of the Hockeytown West podcast. Welcome to the show, Nick. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having us. Super excited.
Yeah, he's got his branded jacket on. They've got nice merch there. I might have to look into their merch here. But we've also, I believe, got Brandon on the line. So are you there, Brandon?
I am. Thank you for having us.
Well, and Nick was telling me that you're the host, which I have listened to your guys' podcast. I know you host the podcast, so I'll try to take your mantle here for the moment, but just set you guys up, because they said, well, yeah, you guys have good chemistry, and when we were meeting before the segment, Nick said, we do? I said, well, I think so. I don't know. It's up to you guys, I guess.
Yeah, we like to joke around and have a good time, but yeah, we've been doing it now for a couple of years, and it's a blast.
Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you guys on. I was telling Nick that we have something similar. We like to kind of cover more in depth here and kind of go through the system. I like the team building aspect of sports. So we talk with an outfit called Tigers Minor League Report, which is kind of like your equivalent. They cover all the minor leagues for the Tigers system, and they know about the major league stuff, but they tend to focus on the minor leagues. But that's where you really can see the future in development, because you can see all these guys at the minor league level. Obviously, we're here in Grand Rapids. It's a great organization here, and so yeah, we're excited to have you guys on and talk some Griffins. I know it's not under the best circumstances with them getting kicked out of the playoffs, but they had a great year here so far.
Yeah, they definitely did have a good year. I think a lot of people look at that playoff exit and go, it's a bad year, but honestly, it was a great year for such a young roster.
Well, yeah, and I'm curious to get your guys' take on the roster. I want to kind of do a debrief of the year and kind of some things that stuck out to you guys. So I'm curious, Brandon, who are some of the players that kind of I'm sure there's several, but kind of rose above expectation for you guys, and players that kind of stuck out as, oh, okay, these are firm pieces of the future of the Red Wings organization here?
I'll have to say Nate Danielson honestly impressed me the most this year. I think when he first came in, it took a lot to get the buy-in from us to really see what was kind of going to be, put on the ice there for him. And we had to quickly remember this is his first year pro, coming out of juniors. I think a lot of people expected him to come in and do exactly what Marco Kasper did. And honestly, when you look at it at the end of the season, he had a better season than Marco Kasper did. And Marco Kasper had, a few years of pro experience before he got to the American League. So for Nate Danielson to come in and kind of settle down and do what he did was probably the most impressive one for me.
Interesting. What about you, Nick? Is there people that stick out to you here?
Yeah, so if you've listened to the show before, I'm a big Flint Firebird. I'm from the Flint, Michigan area. Flint Firebirds is my hometown team, and one guy coming from there was Amadeus Lombardi. So this was his second season, and he just exploded offensively. He was at the top of his offensive output was just insane this year. So it was somebody that was drafted in the lower level for the Red Wings, somebody that you don't expect to kind of make it to the Red Wings, and it's a guy that was really, really talked about of like, hey, this guy could actually make it up there. He could get up there and make the Red Wings. So it's somebody that I'm a big fan of. We've had him on the show a couple times. Great kid, great mindset, and excited to see him continue to flourish.
Well, yeah, Lombardi interests me because it must be because of where he came into the organization and kind of that slotting, because you were hearing good things about him all year. He had a great season, but I feel like he wasn't one of those guys that is included in the conversation of like, oh, here's some Red Wings of the future. And I have to imagine that's how he came in, because otherwise ice production, I know some people have kind of leaned on the fact that there's a little too much playmaking or may get a little too fancy with it at times, but I'm surprised we didn't hear more about him.
This season, he was injured for a little bit of the season, and then they did move him around a little bit. So he's naturally a center, and through about second half of the season, they moved him to the wing. Still putting up points on that side as well, but he's a young kid too. And with the way the season went, there was a lot of injuries. There was a lot of call-ups to Detroit, and so you see he was there was a lot more put on him. There was a lot more pressure on him that he had to perform. He had to continue to move it, to put the team on his shoulders. So I think you saw a lot of that out of him this season. I still think he'll still probably be, depending on the offseason, I think he'll probably be back here in Grand Rapids to work on some other things in this game. He needs to get bigger. He needs to get stronger. But you saw a huge improvement from year 1 to year 2 on him. And that's just kind of what you saw when he was in Flint his last year in junior. So just somebody that I'm still super excited about to see continue to develop and continue to make that next step up.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that cross-training is key, getting him prepared for wherever he's going to end up, kind of in the line trajectory at the big leagues here. And I'm personally excited about Lombardi because one thing that I miss, I watch a lot of Red Wings games. I really like the announcer pairing there, but Ken Daniels doesn't have enough names to say. But he's going to say Amadeus Lombardi with a flourish. So I need him to get to the pros so that they can say his name.
I just can't wait to see the jersey number that he picks so I can put his name on the back of the jersey, because how cool would that be to have a Lombardi Detroit Red Wings jersey? With all the talk about Detroit Lions going for the Lombardi, you get one on a Red Wings jersey. I just think that's going to be the coolest aspect of it on my end.
Well, and hopefully it will be timed around when the Lions get the Lombardi. Hopefully that, he can ascend to the pros around the same time, maybe.
Probably be like the second most popular jersey for the Red Wings at that point, for the newer era.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think of that, but yeah, that's because I'm more focused on the Amadeus, because that's a great name. He's got a song and everything, and then they can play that while he's out there. Rock Me Amadeus, But that's a good point about Lombardi, and it seems like the type of guy that may be a fan favorite when he gets, because I know he's a fan favorite at the Griffins level. But I have a feeling he might be one of those guys that people are drawn to at the NHL level, kind of like Kasper. He seems like that kind of guy that's growing maybe not a fan favorite, but a favorite of the announcers and some of the, because when I listen to the opposing team's broadcast, I hear a lot about Casper, who obviously you guys saw a decent amount of as well.
Yeah, Casper plays that more like gritty style, where Amadeus is more of a flashy, give me the stick, let me show you some geeks, and kind of move around some people. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of sizzle to his game on that point. So yeah, it's it'll be fun to see him, and even Bob Kaiser here. I mean, you should hear the excitement in his voice when Amo has the puck on his stick, ready to go around people. So it's always, you always look up. You're always like, you start getting distracted. You look up, you're like, oh my gosh, Amo's got the puck. Like, what's going to happen here? So.
Oh yeah, it's always an adventure when he has it, I think, but in a good way for a lot of it. But yeah, sometimes he ends up in places he probably didn't anticipate. But that's a good pick. He's one because I was hearing a lot about him. I think you're right, Nick, about the injury piece. That seemed to take a little bit of the air out of things, but then it seemed like he came back healthy and finished fairly strong.
Oh yeah, for sure. Even the last game, he ended up getting some points in the playoff series too. So a little quiet in the first two, but so was the whole team. So I mean, that third game, they really started to put it together at that point and get on the score sheet.
Yeah, and I know they did have some injuries affecting that series. It just felt similar to the Red Wings season to me, that like they were close, but they just had some things not go quite their way with injuries and the way the matchups went. That they obviously the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs, but they were close to it, and they just couldn't quite turn it to the next gear.
Yeah, I think this year for the Red Wings was more of like the standard, right? This was kind of the foundation. This is where we should never fall back lower than where we're at now. The pieces are coming through. Steve Yzerman's drafting very well. We see it here in Grand Rapids. The future's incoming. The cabinet's starting to get stocked back up with players. And you saw a lot of young transition this year too, with Marco Casper being up there. You saw Elmer Soderblom being up there. Dom Shine, the legend here in Grand Rapids, finally getting his chance up there. So you saw a lot of youth movement. And even Albert Johansson, he was here the season prior, and then he's getting some time up in Detroit. So we saw him down here in Grand Rapids, and Simon Evanson with another full year up in Detroit. So a lot of good youth pieces up there that have been coming through Grand Rapids.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you guys. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get Brandon back involved too. But it's good to see the future, because I know people are getting impatient with the Major League club, but there's a lot of pieces coming in the future here, and like you said, they're stacking things. So we'll want to come back with that after the break. But stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Nick Harrington and Brandon Cooke of Hockeytown West. Got to get Brandon back involved. We got to make sure he's on the line here still. I want to talk to you guys because we were talking about kind of the team building aspect during the break and kind of seeing that future and seeing where people are at. I've gotten different opinions from folks that are Red Wings writers and pundits, and obviously a big discussion this year has been the goalie piece, because we know that they have some aging goalies that aren't exactly the future at the major league level, at the NHL level. But I'm curious what you guys think of Kosa here, because obviously he's a big time prospect. He's played well, but one of the recent folks that came on basically went a different direction. A lot of people were saying, hey, he's getting ready in the AHL. They're getting him ready. He needs more seasoning. But Tyler Kuhl of MLive actually was saying that he's at the point where maybe he's been down there too long. I don't think that's what you guys think, but because it takes time. Goalies take time. It's the position that takes the longest. So I'll start with you, Brandon, so we don't lose you there on the line. But Nick's got a furrowed brow, so I'm sure he's got some information here too. But we'll start with you.
Yeah, no problem. So with Kosa, I mean, you said it just right there with time. I think time is going to be the key with this prospect. He's so young still, and he's learning in one of the hardest leagues in the world, right? So at the same time, everyone wants to see him go in and blow the doors down and everything. But if you look at the comparisons in like other draft classes, you look at Jesper Wallstedt and Yaroslav Askarov, he's pacing at the same numbers as both of those goaltenders in the same league still, and neither of them have made that big step like everyone thinks Kosa needs to make right now. So with him, the work ethic is there, the tools are there. It's just the confidence and the consistency is the piece that he's going to continue to work on, and consistency is going to be the biggest piece. When he starts to swim around in net, that's where chaos comes behind him. But at the same time, if he can stay composed, stay focused, and, be consistent game in and game out, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with as a goaltender. But it's going to be patience and time, and I have no problem with him spending more time in Grand Rapids this coming season.
Well, and it seems clear by their approach that they have these goalies that are clearly supposed to bide some time for him, because they're not necessarily the goalies of the future, but they're competent and they're able to fill in the gaps and maybe make a playoff run with those folks, with shoring up some other stuff. But I want to get your take, Nick, because you were making some faces here when I was going through that intro.
Oh, I love Tyler because we're good friends. So,
okay,
yeah,
perfect.
I find it interesting. I didn't know that aspect that Tyler had took out that position on it. So, with Kosa, he was drafted. He was a raw goalie. He needed to be trained. He needed to dial it in with the skill side. On the skill side, he was physical. He's got the physical attributes, but he didn't have. And he has he's just not a trained goalie kind of thing. I'm trying to figure out the words for it. Where somebody like Trey Augustine is the more trained, more developed, more refined goalie, and they knew with Kosa it was going to take time. This is that he's going on to his third season in the AHL. I think the team, the organization has done it pretty well with having these two older goalies to just kind of hold the fort down for him. I think if there's a injury, there's a trade or anything like that, Kosa's going to be the first guy called up, and he's going to be there. He's going to get his time in the NHL. He'll probably get, hopefully, 10, 15 games up there next year. But like Brandon said, we looked at his stats compared to Wallstedt and to Askarov, and they're right. He's better than Wallstedt, and he's right there with Askarov. And, you can't ask for anything more than that. You just got to be patient, especially with goalies. Goalies are voodoo. They develop a lot differently than other positions, and they take the longest. So people just have to be patient here with this guy. So he'll be up there. Just got to give him some time. And I don't think you really want to put him up there with the defense that Detroit has right now and the problems that they're working through. So I think it's best to keep him here with the defense that we have and the defensive coach and the Griffins organization. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good point, Nick. Well, first of all, patience is not a strength of sports fans, as we all know.
Or Wings fans.
Yeah, Wings fans. Yeah, especially with the history. They're a dynasty program, so dynasty programs have a hard time with hard times. But you bring up a good point with the defense, because I feel like some of it is needing some of the reinforcements, maybe from the Griffins level, of some of these younger guys that are in development, that are going to clearly be big time defenders here, or have the potential to be that, but they need to make sure that they have enough time and we get them up so that defense is fortified. Because and I'm not taking out the goalies at the NHL level, because they played fairly well given the defense. They just had to field so many shots, and like you said, that might affect the confidence of a young goalie if that's his first experience when he comes up.
Yeah, Kosa had that one game, and it was it was like a young Dominic Hasek, just kind of all over the place, and just saving as much as he could, but he was kind of swimming out there. So it was a rough game, and he got the win. But it's something that you still want to have confidence, and you want to put you want to put people in the position to succeed, right? And you have to have that time for Kosa to be able to put him in that position to succeed. And in Detroit, wasn't there yet last year.
Well, and when you were talking about, when you're trying to put words to it, the word that was coming to mind for me is like when you play, and I'm sure the NHL games were like this, but I remember this with Madden football, where you had all the rankings and you had speed and strength and all that, and awareness was a huge thing when you like through an out pattern to a receiver and then he goes the wrong way. He doesn't have the right awareness. That's something that I know they're working on with Kosa, because awareness is so key for a goalie. They have to see so many things, and the way the tip of the blade is angled, and then it takes a carom, and obviously it's so hard to see all of these things. But I know he's had some incidents that have been talked about, like going behind the goal there, and the one in the playoffs that Nick just kind of groaned in that one. So we'll go to you next here, Brandon. But yeah, those are things that you got to learn as a young guy. They're mistakes that happen, and hopefully with that seasoning, he can become something where the future pairing, because I imagine obviously the future pairing has got to be Kosa and Augustine once they're both ready, and maybe they can play off of each other because they do have different strengths. How does that sound to you, Brandon?
I mean, that's the dream scenario right there, especially if you're Steve Yzerman. If you can get both those goaltenders to be a 1A, 1B in the NHL, that's a huge deal. So for me with him, like, you can tell when Kosta's dialed in some games, when he's absolutely dialed, he's a different goaltender. And in those games where there's the mistakes, it is frustrating. But I think as a Red Wings fan, I'd rather him make those mistakes in Grand Rapids in the playoffs than in Detroit in the playoffs or a playoff clinching scenario game. So you got to learn from them down here and grow from them and hope that next year you see less of that.
Oh yeah, and that's what it's all about, and that's why I was wanting to have you guys on the show, because we were talking about that team building aspect, and all this stuff takes time, and it's important to get that seasoning. If they don't, then that can disrupt somebody's career and they can go the wrong direction. But yeah, what about some of these other? We talked with Keith Gave at one point about his Russian 5 book and some of his other books, and in the Grind Line book he goes through all the names of the lines, and I love that. And I want to get, so we already got a couple. I want all 5 people to have hyphenated names. Can we do that? I want to do that. Can we work on that? What do you think, Nick? We got a couple coming through the system, but we need more hyphen, and then it can be like the hyphen line, the hyphen 5.
The whole initial line. I think that's what they're starting to call
Okay.
it. The whole initial line.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's anybody in this draft that we could go with right now that's got a hyphenated name.
See, this is why we got to build the team for the future here, so we got to go after hyphenated names. No, but seriously, who do you guys? Obviously, there's different levels of strength here, because we're talking about the goaltending, and at the NHL level, it's something that will eventually need to be turned over. But there's good prospects through the system. Same with defense, although there still may need to be some reinforcements there. Where do you guys see them angling here in the draft?
I think for me, they need just that elite shooter. I mean, you look in Detroit, there's a couple of those guys that can obviously rip the puck, but when you look at the prospects, there's a lot of smart players, a lot of good passers, a lot of smart shooters, but you're missing that elite shot. And I think that's what you need the most right now to be able to come in and score goals. You've got setup guys all up and down this organization. We just need that prolific goal scorer to come in. Interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. That's why it's interesting to talk about it, because they do have a lot of people would say, well, what about the defense? But there's a lot of defensemen coming up through the pipeline, and Nick's still thinking, so I don't know if he has one yet.
I would typically agree with Brandon, but I'm going to disagree. No, I'm playing. I'll just go a different route. I'm going to go right D. You can never have enough right defensemen. So, but I mean, a strong winger, a scorer. We've got a guy over in Russia. If we can get him over here, that I think that solves that issue. But yeah, right D. I'm going to go that route.
Well, we're not back in the Russian 5 days. We should be able to get the guy over from Russia here. That was an issue back. That's why I love that story. It's such a great story that Keith tells. But yeah, there's a lot of people coming through the pipeline, and it'll be fun to watch them. We appreciate you guys coming on the show. I want to do this again. Brandon, I know you're in town too, so next time maybe we'll do it in studio with the 3 of us and kind of build a show around it when we can maybe do a preview for the Griffin season next season. But tell people where they can follow you guys here in between, because I know you're going to have a lot of content over the summer as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube as well, and you can follow us on social media pages if you just look up at Hockeytown WPod. And Ryan, we really appreciate the opportunity. We'll definitely take you up on that offer for some sort of preview before the season starts.
Definitely. I think it would be fun to have you guys in studio and kind of build a whole show around it and have a whole local Griffins themed show here. And because we haven't covered them enough this season, but all those sports kind of get jammed together, and now we have a little bit more room. But yeah, appreciate you being on the show, Brandon. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
And Nick, thanks for coming in studio. Appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us. And like I said, we'll plan to have you back in here at some point in time.
Perfect. Sounds good. Maybe the draft. Maybe a little earlier.
That would be good. Yeah, because I do want to cover the draft, and you guys will know how to cover it. So that might be a good plan. We'll talk about that. But thanks to the Hockeytown West guys. We appreciate them being in here, and we're going to turn our attention to the minor leagues of baseball for the Tigers Minor League Report. We're going to have Jayden Hewitt on after the break, so stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're turning our attention from minor league hockey to minor league baseball, but also Major League Baseball. But fans of the show will know that I'm a big fan of the Tigers Minor League Report and try to get different reports from the different contributors there. And so we got a new one on today. We've got Jayden Hewitt. Welcome to the show, Jayden.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. We appreciate you joining the show and excited to talk with you because one of my favorite things, I like all of the Tigers Minor League Report stuff, but one of my favorite things, series that you guys have done so far this season was your series on the stadium aspect, because it's just kind of funny to me. This has been grandfathered in, but baseball, it's been hard to change it. We've been trying to do it in recent years. I'd be interested in your take on this because you're a younger guy, but you're still a big baseball fan and you like a lot of the things about it. But it's funny to me because it's kind of a push and a pull. There's older fans that like the history of it, want to keep it exactly the same, but then there's younger fans that say, hey, can't we have more interaction with the players? Can't we speed this up a little bit? But one of the aspects of that that's funny to me is that it's one of the only games that it's not uniform. We don't have uniformity in baseball because it depends on where you play. It depends. The walls are in different places. It's like the schoolyard. Like, okay, well the touchdown is at that post. Oh, the home run's at that post. That's what these baseball parks are doing at the major league level, and that just kind of cracks me up sometimes. And we all just accept it because it's been that way forever. But you did a good job kind of summarizing and analyzing these ballparks because it does play into things.
Yeah, and so it was really funny because I had always kind of thought about it growing up and watching baseball too. Like you mentioned, there's no uniformity in baseball when it comes to the stadiums. And I've always appreciated that, actually. I think it's really cool that you might have to go in there and game plan for a different stadium, a different day when it comes to the weather. So I kind of wanted to look at it, and I know that StatCast had added data, and it's gotten even better adding data over time. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll break down the first 5 series or so, you know. And it would be awesome, obviously, working for the minor league report to do this in the minor leagues. There's not a lot of data there yet, but we'll work on it for sure. But it was really cool to me to be able to kind of go and look at the differences in each stadium, how they statistically play out, but also kind of how they have their own advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, we know about like Yankee Stadium and the short porch in right field. That's a little bit disadvantageous to pitchers, but advantageous to batters. But we're all playing on the same field, and I think that's the most important thing to realize. Is that's my take on it, and I have a little bit older take on it than I think a lot of younger people. Is I think that it's important to kind of hold on to that tradition. Now, there's a lot of other things you can kind of get rid of, change up a little bit, and I don't mind that. But going with the stadiums, yeah, I really do think it's a cool thing to kind of have those advantages. You know, say Jack Flaherty's preparing to go to Seattle, he might know that he can get a lot more fly balls induced because Seattle just doesn't have the ball travel very well. So, and I broke down Seattle. Seattle is a crazy stadium to look at. It's actually worse for hitters than it's more disadvantageous for hitters than it is advantageous in Coors Field for Rockies hitters. So kind of a crazy thing to look at there.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I did read that piece, and yeah, it was. I learned a ton about the fields, and I'm right there with you. It's just funny how we all accept it, and it's like, well, that's the way the field is. But it is fun because, I mean, even on the broadcast the other day, being with the last series being in Toronto, I know they had that where Benetti didn't even know, and he's very knowledgeable about everything going on. He didn't even know with the new rules of the field when Guerrero made that catch heading into the dugout, if like which step was out of bounds and subject to different ruling. But that does make it kind of fun because, yeah, you're kind of all learning together, and that's an aspect that I think a lot of people underestimate in baseball because on the surface, that's one of the reasons I find baseball so interesting. On the surface, it's very simple. You got a pitcher and you got a hitter, and the hitter's trying to put it in play and the pitcher's trying to strike him out. But it's the most complex game when you get into the in-depth stuff, and we've got a great club for that because I mean, this is my opinion anyways. It might be a little bit of a homer opinion, but there's not a guy that's better at taking advantage of the differences in the ballparks, in the clubs, and seeing all of that than AJ Hinch. So it's fun to see him manipulate some of these things.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. I don't think that's a homer take at all. Looking over time, AJ Hinch has just been marvelous at that. You know, the pitching chaos thing he had to deal with last year, and using different pitchers in certain situations that, you know, most teams might not, because he kind of had to. And we're seeing that again with Mize and Reese Olson going to the DL, or the IL, sorry. And we're seeing that now that he's going to have to kind of tap back into that. But he's always kind of the next step for him. He's never on the current step. And I think that's important, especially as a manager in modern day baseball. And we know we've seen organizations like the Rays, or we've seen organizations even like Houston, who's also pretty into analytics, but also they've had the scandal issues as well. But we've seen a lot of these organizations take on an analytical approach. Joe Madden was kind of like the grandfather of that. In a weird way, he did a lot of different stuff. You know, he put pitchers into the outfield and all that stuff, but they won games, and he found the advantages where he could find them. And I think, like you said, it's important to know where you're going. And, you know, I know that the staff and all the people that work on the staff are preparing really heavily for not only situational stuff, but also, you know, where they're going, what the weather is going to be like. You know, we got to go to Milwaukee and Seattle this year, and they had roofs. And the weather was iffy enough to where they were closed, and that's advantageous, obviously, to a team, but also the hitters in specific. But, you know, if it's 30 degrees in Detroit, you don't have a roof to prepare for that. And the wind might either be blowing in. You know, Detroit is one of the few stadiums that faces an odd direction compared to other stadiums. So the wind blows a little bit differently there than it might go in other places. So you might see a lot of home runs die out there. And then in the summer, you start seeing them go out, obviously, as the weather gets warmer. But, you know, the wind conditions, wind patterns might change. And it's a lot of things to look at. I was looking at weather data when I was doing that. I was looking at, obviously, the StatCast data, who also incorporated their own weather data. So it was really kind of eye-opening to see. And I haven't broke down any stadiums since then. And I kind of wish I did, and kind of dove into Coors Field a little bit more, because it is a crazy thing to think about how just the altitude can change the ball flight.
Oh yeah, I would have liked to have seen that report. I'm missing that now as we move on to the other ballparks, because you did it with the first 5 or so, and I'm missing it now as the Tigers go through the season. But I'm sure it was very information and data heavy to go through all that. So I'm sure it was tough. I'm sure you'll add more ballparks as you go. But yeah, everybody's got to check this out at TigersMLReport.com, because they go through all of the things that Jayden's talking about, the plate positioning, the weather. And now I was wondering, because I was reading the Tigers one before the show, and I was wondering because I was kind of looking at like the variability of especially something like the Tigers. Like you said, they play in a cold weather climate that gets hot over the course of the season. And us as Michiganders, we know that the weather varies heavily here. There's all the jokes about wintertime and the second winter and the third winter and all those kinds of things. And I've been to an opening day where it was snowing heavily, and there's all of that going on. I'm wondering if that, because I didn't really think of it this way until I read your series, Jayden, but in the NFL, you kind of look at teams, and certain teams are better prepared to play in the cold. That was always a thing with Green Bay and playing at Lambeau. But I'm wondering if there's an element to that with the Tigers, that they're so used to all of the changes, being in an open air stadium with a lot of weather variability, that they're more prepared for going on the road and dealing with those different things than, say, I'm just going to throw a random team out, but say a team like San Diego, where the weather is very consistent there.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And you make, when you say that, a lot of ideas ran through my head, and as to like looking at the data and seeing, you know, how that would work. But yeah, you make a great point. Playing in that really natural environment sometimes too, where it's 25 degrees and it's snowing. You just don't think about baseball. You think about football maybe, and then basketball season's indoors. That's not baseball weather outdoors. So you look at that, and I think that it makes the team not only pay attention to the weather a little bit more, but get used to having to square up the ball a little bit more. Obviously, we've all played baseball in the cold, and our hands get, all tingly when you hit the ball in the wrong spot. And it's one of those things where you just don't want to do it, and they have to kind of figure out and go around that. Obviously, that's at a very simple level. They are way more analytical than that. They are prepared to the max. But it is something to consider, that playing in one of those climates early on in the year is important. They lucked out, going to the West Coast at the beginning of the year, and then going, straight from spring training to Los Angeles. That's a very lucky draw right there. And then when they came back to Detroit, it wasn't horrible. So, they kind of skipped out on the really, really bad weather this year. They had a few really cold days, but, they didn't get into the snow and gale force winds and stuff like that. Actually, when I looked at Milwaukee, they were supposed to be in gale force winds, but they have a roof, thank God. So, yeah, you make a great point when you say that. It is something to look at. Seattle is one of those stadiums too that's pretty low elevation, so throughout the year it is pretty consistent all year around, even if the weather varies a little bit in temperature, just because the elevation is so low.
Well, and you're talking about how they're prepared at the major league level, but obviously they're all human too. So, hands get cold, and when you're trying to focus on a grip and get as good of a grip on a ball that you can, that little difference makes a big difference with the weather and the different elements. But if for all the people out there that are going, okay, you guys are talking about stadiums a lot, I want to bring it home here at the end of this segment, because I did read that, because you say, well, how much effect does it actually have? I did read that it potentially factored into Bregman's decision to not come to Detroit, because he didn't necessarily want to be playing 81 games in that stadium. So these things can factor in more than just the conditions. It factors in to free agency and player preference and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's happened for a while. The Tigers were at a time in a place, in the early 2010s where they were able to throw around a little bit more money and get players to come in, but they also had a great, system coming with, developed guys, but winning trades and things like that too. And that's what you see a lot with the Tigers right now is, again, winning trades, winning the draft, getting guys that you can develop and keep there for a little while at least, And the Tigers, thankfully, aren't in the spot as the A's or the Pirates where they just can't afford anybody. So you get to this point where it's like, oh, gosh, I want to sign a really good free agent, but that might be a factor. And you might see more pitching signed with the Tigers, granted they don't need it, than you would a hitter. And that kind of sucks as a fan when you want a big star, And Detroit's a great city for a star to be in. It's just, like you said, it's a cold weather environment, and it's really variable. We got lucky this year. Bregman wouldn't have had to play through the environment that he thought he was going to have to play through, but also the stadium itself, too. I mean, we moved in the fences a little bit, which was really good to see. You obviously don't want to try to hit the ball 420 feet to dead center, but, still really deep gaps. Really good for triples. I mean, the Tigers rank at the top of the league for triples every year, even if the speed's not there. We're pretty low in the league for stolen bases. Not that we don't have fast guys, but our guys hit a lot of extra base hits and stuff like that too. So it is interesting to look at all those variables. And like you said, Bregman just didn't want to play in that ballpark. I can't say whether or not he would be doing the same thing he's doing in Boston and Detroit right now. But it's hard to say that he wouldn't be doing something relatively close. So for him to make that decision and that be one of the factors was a little interesting to read about. But, we're rolling. We got 30 wins, so that's all right.
Yeah, it seems to be working out for both parties. So thankfully the Tigers have had some resurgence from different guys. And I want to talk about one of those guys after the break, because you had a great article on Torkelson and kind of breaking down with similar data-driven approach, breaking down some of the reasons he's in better shape this year. So we're going to pick up with that after the break with Jayden. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Jayden Hewitt of the Tigers ML Report. Yeah, Jayden, you did a great job covering the ballparks. That was fun. We'll have to do that more here as we go. But I want to talk about that Torkelson article that you wrote, because obviously his resurgence has been a big key to the Tigers' success this year. And that is one of the things, and maybe it's because I kind of missed out on the down year a little bit. I wasn't watching baseball quite as much, but I just thought it made too much sense for him to have a resurgent year, especially with the pressure off. I do think that was a factor, but you had a great article breaking down some of the technique stuff that also led to it, because it's not just that. It's not just him barely making the team and not having us kind of forgetting about, okay, yeah, he's one of one, all of that. But I'd like you to kind of talk about that article a little bit and go through the process of analyzing the batting stance and some of the things that you saw over the last few years.
Yeah, so Torkelson is kind of an odd case when it comes to, a prospect that had the grades that he had. He had a 70 grade power coming out of college, which is, rare. We don't see a lot of hitters with 70 grade power coming out of college, a 60 grade hit tool. He was really that guy. He was an easy number one pick, and going through the minors, that was kind of, he was living up to that. He was living up to, the raw power. He was living up to the hit tool, although his average was a little bit lower. His OPS was still pretty good. And then, he got to the big leagues and he struggled a little bit initially. And most guys do at some point, even if they come firing out of the gates, they're going to have a problem at some point that they have to figure out. But then you get to the point where, 2023, that was kind of the year that you were like, okay, he's really going to break out, because he had a really good end of the year. And he did. He had a really good year. He had, so some of his advanced stats this year are better than his advanced stats in 2023, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But he was just hitting for power. He had 94 RBIs, and, RBIs are a stat that, some people think is attributed to luck or spot in the order, but 94 RBIs is a lot regardless. So, you went into 2024 like, okay, he's going to become a superstar. This is his time to go and become a superstar. And then you kind of get to this idea of his stance changing, and you alluded to that a little bit. He started at Arizona State. He was a little bit more crouched, still had the bat just off his shoulder, and then he gets going to the MLB. His stance changes just a little bit, and, his first year in the pros, it changes just a little bit. And you never know, working with a hitting coach or maybe his own trainer, his stance changes a little bit, because maybe it was working before, we got to MLB, or maybe it was working before he got to Toledo and he had his struggles, And then you see his stance change up a little bit in 2023, and you're like, okay, he keeps changing his stance. Every year kind of change their stance. So, it's not a huge deal, and he was doing damage, so nobody paid attention to it. And then he becomes a little bit more relaxed. He has his bat off his shoulder a little bit more in 2024, and his swing is really loopy. And when I say that, it's pretty long, and his bat length, his swing length, and his bat speed might not show that nearly as much as like it shows on tape a little bit. And I'm not an expert by any means, or else I would be in an organization somewhere. But looking at it, his swing was a lot shorter and quicker in his first couple years, and it was still shorter and quicker in 2023. Even though he was a little bit more relaxed and got into that mind frame. So I think maybe because that worked in 2023, took that to 2024. He obviously had a really bad time. He got sent down right around the beginning of June, I believe. And then he comes back at the end of the year, plays okay. But his stance is a lot different. It's more like his stance at Arizona State or at Toledo. And then this year, his stance is just entirely different from 2024. It's a lot more like his stance at Arizona State. It's a little bit different. He's a little bit more closed than he is open. And that's just, feet and stuff like that. It's just more of a comfortability thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be changed significantly to change your stance or change your swing and everything like that too. But, his bat speed started to go down, and that was a little bit weird. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But now we get to this year, he's killing the ball. His whiff rate and his K rate, though, the strikeouts and his swings and the misses are still around the same, but he's making a lot more in-zone contact, which was a big problem. He was, missing the ball in the middle of the plate a lot or popping the ball up, which was a huge issue, and that got figured out this year. He's in a lot more line drives. Even though his rates remain the same, he's making a lot more contact with the ball. And it's me going into my nerdy stat talk, but it's really cool to see that he's kind of just ever so slightly changed his stance back and forth, and now he's kind of figured something out.
Well, and to try to zoom out to the bigger picture, that was great in-depth analysis. But the thing that was interesting to me about that explanation and your article as a whole is that, obviously he had a lot of pressure on him being the first overall pick. And not that he hasn't had any adversity in his life, but the idea that the guys that are like that, they're always at the top of the class. He was the top of the class in high school, in college. Then he gets drafted. He's number one overall. And it's tough when you have to face this because he really didn't have a lot of experience overcoming that. You have a lot of examples in sports where a walk-on then overcomes that. Baker Mayfield comes to mind in football, where you overcome that and then you work your way all the way up to the number one pick. He's got kind of a different journey because he hadn't had to deal with that adversity, and once he did, then he had to work it out. But to his credit, he's retooled. He's gone back to what worked for him, and now he's found his stride again. And it's great to see because this could be an example of I just can't. I'm not used to this. I'm not used to working this out. But to his credit, he got retooled. The coaching staff, I'm sure, helped him, but he's overcome it, and he's looking great this year.
Yeah, and I think you can tell that he probably wanted to go back to something that felt a little bit more comfortable. I can't speak as to what changed or who changed his stance or his swing or anything like that, but I get the vibe, considering that was his stance through college and that was his approach and stance through the beginning of his time in the minor leagues, to where he probably just didn't feel super comfortable in a different stance. And anybody that's played baseball, it feels really uncomfortable for a while until you get used to it. And that might not always work. And like you said, I can't speak to his life in adversity, but he didn't go through a lot of adversity in his time in the minor leagues. Obviously on a day-to-day basis, probably. He was still getting, struck out. He was still going through that. But he had a really good year in his main full year in the minor leagues. So, he was probably feeling good. And then he gets up to the MLB, doesn't play very well, and then he's like, oh, shoot, I got to figure this out. So he goes through that first stretch where he's like, I got to really figure it out. Figures it out in 2023, and then it's just not working for him again in 2024, and he's probably like, what the heck is going on? And that's a weird spot to be as an athlete, and it's a weird spot to be in the MLB. It's like, okay, I lived up to my expectations last year. Now they're way higher. What do I do? You remove those expectations this year. You're like, just go out there and hit. And he's gone out there and hit. He's done what he's supposed to do. And like you said, I think it's a lot to do with expectation. I don't think that's ever lost on him that he's expected to do a lot. But with the lineup hitting a lot better around him, I think it kind of lifts a weight off his shoulder. If he has a bad day where he goes 0 for 4, Riley Green might go 3 for 4. Baez might go 2 for 4 with a home run, or, everybody's hitting really well. Gleyber Torres, I could go through the whole lineup and they're hitting pretty well. And that takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. And you can see a lot with even Baez too. And I'll jump into this for a second, because Baez, you can tell when a lot of the guys are hitting better around him that he starts to hit better. And I think he struggled with being that main dude and having to produce. And that might be the same with Torkelson as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see it all across the lineup, but that's great analysis, Jayden. We appreciate you coming on the show. We got to get out of here, but we'll definitely have you back on the show and probably do something around the draft here. But appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward to having you back on.
Awesome. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jayden. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks to Jayden Hewitt and the rest of our guests, Nick Harrington, Brandon Cooke, Steve Chapman, Casey Falkner, and Darin Burns. Want to thank our sponsors real quick. Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Encore Business Group, Rydan Investments, and Grand Management Group. So be sure to tune into the show next week from 7 to 9, the Sports Project in between, 7 to 9 on Wednesday, and 10 to 12 on Saturday. Until then, stay informed and stay vigilant. We'll talk to you next week.